Imagine a Ghana where power outages are a thing of the past. Imagine a Ghana where businesses thrive and families enjoy uninterrupted electricity. But a big question to answer, what to do with the ECG, the institution that stands at the center of our energy landscape. For decades, ECG has been the backbone of Ghana's energy sector. But as the nation grows and evolves, so too must our approach to energy. Tonight, we gather to explore the future of ECG and the role it plays in powering our nation.
ECG has a total liability of 13 billion from suppliers. Demurrage alone, because the transformers have been sitting there, by the end of 2024, demurrage 1.5 billion.
They sell these containers, these cables that ECG needs after the supplier has been paid. They sell the container and then people resell back to ECG.
Let's all assist the minister, because we all need to get to the bottom of this, to get to the bottom of where each container sits. And I think it's just a matter of all of us, including ECG, including the two state agencies who are in control of the port, have a proper sit down.
Because
it's worse in this area. We experience it at least 5 times a day. It flickers on and off within hours.
It's medium the bear 5 times a day.
As barbers, we come and we are compelled to go back home. It's really affecting our work. Dumso is definitely back. We are losing our items and all this heat. It's better they take the light than flicker it.
Well, from the entrepreneur to the homeowner, from the student to the policymaker, we have a stake in ECG's success. And that's why Joy News is bringing you this national dialogue to stimulate a constructive conversation, promote a better understanding of the issues, and of course, encourage collaboration among stakeholders to address the challenges confronting ECG. So again, I ask, what to do with the ECG? Let's get started on this critical conversation. The lights are on and the dialogue is officially open. My name is Elton Roby. Always a pleasure to be with you. I'm your host for tonight. Welcome to another Joy News National Dialogue, what to do with the ECG. And of course, my colleague Winston Teki is here with me in the studio as we go over the numbers to establish the foundation for this very important discussion. Winston, what do we have?
So ECG is a critical asset for the nation. We keep talking about industrialization. We compare ourselves to Singapore, China, and many countries that started independence, same as Ghana. And we say we could have been there if we had the structures that will propel us to that level. Today, we want to go to the history of the engine that should drive our national development. I want to assess ECG. ECG, first of all, the conversation has been about where the container be. Where are the missing containers? There's been reports that so far 1,328 containers remain unaccounted for.
And this is according to a technical committee that was set up by the current energy minister to probe the missing containers.
Absolutely. And these numbers are a reality of what was deduced out of the report. So far, the committee found out that 1,134 containers are what they can account for. ECG's inquiries give us a figure of 2,464,000, and those are the numbers. The difference gives us a total of 1,328. So these are what currently is being sought out for, and this is according to the technical committee. And these numbers, consistently we keep hearing what has been happening in the media. Some containers being found left in some buildings here and there. However, there's been calls for ECG themselves to still look out for how many or account for how many are still left. We also want to look at some interesting conversation. We had before Parliament when the minister made mention of the fact that this is how much ECG is losing in terms of how long the containers were left at the port.
Almost a billion Ghana cedis.
Almost a billion Ghana cedis. That is 909 million Ghana cedis. And this is how much it is costing basically just keeping the container there. I'm aware of some documents by the former ECG MD, Mr. Dubik, who was consistently lamenting that those containers shouldn't be placed on sale or auction by the Ghana Revenue Authority, which became a key conversation. And these communications were documented, although some of them did not find access to the media compared to other ones that were leaked consistently. So we want to look at a very interesting numbers here. This is the share of procurement. When you look at ECG, one of the key conversations is who is selling what and how is the procurement process. ECG conversation became topical where some of the board of directors were saying that ECG is actually a private entity. And the conversation of whether it's a private or public entity came to light. But if you look at the procurement structure of ECG, in 2022, 109 of other procurements were done, which are basically not sole sourced. Only 33 were sole sourced.
Meaning the 33 did not go to competitive bidding? Absolutely.
And probably could be key structures in that compartment. If you look at the table here, you realize that from 33, it rose to 512 sole source contract being given out without going through competitive bidding. That is in just 2023 alone.
So in 2022, the number that did not go through competitive bidding stood at 33.
Yes.
Now it will jump to 512 in 2023, just a year after.
Over 100%, over more than 100%, as you can see there. And this is a disturbing phenomenon because the debate as to whether the source or the prices being given to ECG to pay based on supplies or distributors or contracts signed are legitimately reviewed is the key question. And if you look at the numbers in 2024 alone, it hit around 425 just sole sourcing. And this is the key focus here.
And this, again, is according to the technical committee.
That's what they deduced out of this conversation. And these numbers really tells you a story. We will come to that very shortly. ECG's 2025 budget cut. And this is according to the finance minister when he was making energy minister, probably when he was presenting to parliament, that ECG's budget cut has been cut from 500 million to 250 million. And this number...
And the understanding here, this constitutes government support to ECG in the 2025 fiscal year.
Yes. And this support consistently pushed ECG to look more profitable because of that support. However, there are some key challenges that ECG itself was confronted with. We'll come to the point where we see whether the ECG's board structure or let's say the governance structure is something that could be incorporated or has improved over the years. And this is something that will be discussed this evening.
And there's been a lot of concerns about whether ECG should go through PPA in terms of the procurement that they undertake. There is some clarity on this matter, at least according to Gloria Kufu.
Absolutely. And based on that, ECG Defense tries to say that they are probably operate as a private entity. They are government, but the operations is more of a private induced. They also came to the point that ECG is not bound by the Public Procurement Act. Therefore, they do not abide by the provisions in the Public Procurement Act. And also, ECG made the point that following its own internal procurement rules. And this conversation tells you that this has been how the operation has been, giving the indication in the previous chart that all the procurement numbers are as a result of the narrative that ECG gave in defense of why they operate the way they operate.
Right.
Meanwhile, Attorney General's opinion came by discussing or let's say lambasting ECG for what he deduced as its modus operandi. ECG, according to the Attorney General, does not receive...
This is the former Attorney General's opinion on this matter.
Yes.
Gloria Kufu in 2020.
And she said that ECG does not receive capital injection from government. ECG is not part of the public service. ECG qualifies for exemption from the Procurement Act. And these are the opinion of Gloria Kufu in July 28, 2020. And subsequently, the public procurement authorities also came to respond to ECG based on their initial assertion that they operate as a private entity. The first thing the procurement entity made mention is the fact that Government of Ghana's ECG is the sole owner or sole shareholder of ECG. That is the defense of the procurement authority. They also went ahead to say ECG is a state-owned enterprise. And the third is funds generated by ECG are considered public funds. And not just operational funds for just ECG to accelerate the operations. ECG must comply with the Procurement Act, and this was quite instructive in that assessment.
So now let's talk about ECG planned against actual procurement.
These numbers there tells a very interesting story. In these numbers you see here is between 2002 and 2014. So if you look at the planned projection of ECG, they plan to spend 4.1 billion in all the operations between 2022 and 2024. These are data we saw there. And however, when you look at the actual amount of money they spend, it hovered to about 16.9 billion Ghana cedis. And that gives us a differential of 12.8 billion in terms of deviation from how much they plan to spend. And this is the key issue that I'm sure today's dialogue is going to delve deeper with a lot of expert explanations going to make reason to these numbers here.
And again, this is according to the technical committee set up by the energy minister to probe into the missing containers.
So these numbers tell us whether there will be prosecution, there will be a review, a committee.
I mean, there should be a reason why ECB projected to spend 4.1 and ended up spending 16.9.
And that is a serious headache for the nation because ECG, as a critical asset for the nation, is supposed to ensure equitable power supply, ensure cheaper power supply. We know the rural electrification project, that is something that is supposed to ensure access to electricity.
Right.
All these are conversations, but why most of them are not succeeding will boil to why we have spent so much, but little to speak about.
So, I mean, these are the individuals who headed ECG, at least in the last, from 2017 up until 2024.
Yes.
So, Wachi Apia from 2017 to 2019, Ajiman Budu from 2019 to 2022, Samuel Dobek Mahama from 2022 to 2024, David Asamoah up until, just some few weeks ago. And now there's a new MD for the ECG.
Absolutely. Mr. David Asamoah is now the...
No, he's not. He's been removed. There's a new MD for the ECG.
Absolutely. The light will be shown.
Of course. And he's right here in the studio with me.
Yes, I would. But if you look at the history of ECG, one thing you could see is the corporate governance structure is a key challenge. And if you look at the profitability or loss of the whole structure, it appears it has not been well managed. That is the outlook of ECG. But we'll delve deeper into that. ECG's board chairs in 2017 to 2024, we had Kelly Gajekpo, who was the board chair. Taken over by Herbert Krapper.
Who later will become a Minister of State in charge of energy before the expiration of the Akufo-Addo administration. But he will leave the scene for Alexander Afenyo-Markin, the current minority leader, to head the board to the expiration of the Akufo-Addo administration.
Absolutely. And the key conversation that became quite topical was the fact that where are the missing containers?
Right.
And the state of ECG.
And the role played by the board during that particular, episode.
Yes, and why is it that ECG is where it is? There's been a lot of spectrum conversation whether it should be on concession, just as some were done in South Africa and Kenya.
In fact, there are three proposals for government to consider, and we'll get to that as well.
Absolutely. Now, ECG's profitability, which I want us to look at, is between 2012 to 2023. As you can see from the numbers here, it has always been in the negative conundrum until in 2016, where it hit a profit margin of 209 million. And you can see from these numbers that within these years, that and in 2020 alone, did we experience some form of profitability of 410.
And we'll probe why it went up so high, almost quadrupling the revenue that ECG was getting. And this happened during the tenure of Mr. Samuel Dobek Mahama.
The disturbing numbers is quite mind-blowing. From 497 million in losses to 2.2 billion in losses. So the numbers moving from just not even 1 billion in 2017 to 2018, but from 400 million to 2.2 billion to next 2019, 1.4 billion. The billion numbers is quite disturbing. One thing that was very interesting is as of 2023, we were operating around 10.2 billion. We know the independent power producers, the debt owed them, which we'll come to that shortly, and these are the liabilities of ECG. If there's been cause to add the whole liabilities of ECG to the total debt to know how much our debt to GDP is really looking like. Currently, debt to GDP, debt owed to IPPs, independent power producers, which are basically like 9 in numbers, is around 1.73 billion. That was
United States dollars.
Yeah, dollars. reiterated by the finance minister when he was before the House of Parliament during the budget presentation. And debt owed by ECG alone is 68 billion. And this is the debt on the burden of the new MD of ECG, the debt on each of us as a nation. And this is something we will be tackling as a nation, whether we have the needed muscles, looking at our current revenue structure. Now, debt owed to just the IPPs.
We're going to that.
Yes. And one thing that is very interesting is Ghana, we went to the IMF because we said we have challenges in managing our economy. We seek conditionalities based on the loan that was given to us. And IMF came out during their consultative meeting and said and proposed that in consultation with the World Bank and the IMF, government will prepare a restructuring strategy to open ECG's operation to private sector participation. That was a proposal. But as to how that proposal will be implemented is something I'm sure today we will be delving deeper into. Proposed ECG privatization model, and this is something I'm just going to be hitting on because the key conversation I want our viewers to know is to stay tuned because we will be delving deeper today in whether it should go, stay, or should be given on concession. One business entity controls entire ECG.
That's the proposal coming from the Jabez Amises Committee. One recommendation that they've made to government. There are two more.
And the second one is different ECG operations are handled by separate entities. This is the second proposal. The third proposal is privatization of home electricity delivery only. So if you are home, they deliver electricity to your house, basically based on how much you're able to afford per day. Then this tells us a very interesting story of what or the state of our energy sector is from the history of containers, from the history of profitability, IPPs, IMF, and also, as we saw last, the recommendation. This is the foundation for today's conversation.
Thank you so much, Winston Taki, and of course from Joy Business. Now, let's wrap up the state of ECG from the perspective of consumers who feel the impact of services provided by ECG. After this report, I'll introduce my guests for this national conversation live here on Joy News and, of course, on Joy 99.7 FM.
For several years, the Electricity Company of Ghana have been at the center of controversy, from its inability to provide stable electricity to debt. Today, we are taking to the street of Kumasi to engage with residents on their thoughts as to what we should do with ECG.
As for the Doomsday thing that we are talking about, earlier this year, I think the Doomsday has started again. And then no announcement will come. They will just switch off the lights and switch it on anytime that they want and switch it off anytime that they like. And this is also, destroying our appliances. Your TV and your fridges will be on and then the light will go off and then it will come on again. I mean, not at once, but it may continue about 30 to 40 minutes, It will be doing that on and off, on and off, on and off this thing. And it is affecting us, really. So, if the ECG can do something about it, because it's not helping us. I don't know if it's the lab bill that we used to pay, it's the same lab bill that we pay. And they used to increase it yearly. So, if you do increase it there, then you have to, give us better this thing, better supply. You have to supply good electricity so that we can also feel the money that we are paying. We can also feel it.
I live in a new site, and I think it's too much for us because we also have exams and all, and sometimes we even sleep in the darkness, and it's not too good. It's not helping us. We are students, obviously, so we need the light to study and all that, and then we don't get it. Well, I don't know what to tell them, but I hope they fix it soon. If it's going to help us, I think it's not a problem. Yeah, if they can manage the whole thing properly, it's not a problem.
We do feel polite. And I tell my best son so if you quite the chain no so your home must a damn brew, a bass into me that. You may say a bass this be because bones soon, my son, but down because bones soon as I bet down. See, no sooner than I mean and one to my show no young baby my. And him said, I mean to meet me, I am and to Munyama. me te bom so Ejetedu no pa nanse na asa aba from kakra so manom de we ni baako nanse a eja hyehye ba ekrom no na ye hu se ase so te kakra nesa de na kanye kura electricity for no ye ni ma do kroncha o mo yesa omo nanim ade ha o mo nti o mo yesa nto mo hwe no mo nya hu bibi se skasaba o mo moa se sky de koto in light ne ban so na ho kire o mo ye bibi. So
sometimes you get home and you don't have light. This power cut doesn't help us at all. I stay at Bomso and they turn off my light regularly until recently. We don't know why ECG does this. If they need money, let's help them.
Why, yes, I never say that they go free to work on Kwana say, work on a Namshamana say. Yes, Romeo will be my. Oh, so we don't want to make it out of former Dobekita my. We are not want to be who be dear. One over ma do betty me. A man so hene be or yene be or no soon kita na de. But so has no no soon to me. E be on to me come on send baby no or their mo before front and pakwaso. Cause so well kita wadwuma hwe so ye say their mo bi.
It affects me with the electricity. I cannot charge my phone. And I cannot iron my shirt. You see how my shirt look like. If I not iron my shirt, it will look dirty and I will not look neat. I think we should fix the wires, the old ones, and replace it with new ones. Yeah.
Ghana they free light off and they are no money was ECG for minimum the overcome.
We have been in Dumso for years. We plead with the ECG. They should be proactive.
More improvement about Majumana service and more provide Amayeno.
They know this problem already, and we don't know why they are not working on it. They know this problem already. So if they really want to service there, then they have to do something about it. I mean, from this year upwards, they have to do something about it. We don't know their problem. If they have genuine problem, they should come out and tell us, the Ghanaians, we have genuine problem like this, and that. So that if you see that your light is on, or your light is off, you know, say, ECG has complained that they have what problem. That's why the light is doing such things.
You see, we are about in yogurt. When the light out comes, sometimes our yogurt will ferment. We are losing a lot of products. We deal in natural fruit drinks too. So when the light out comes, by the time we realize all the fruits will be fermenting. Yes, like we have 20 soya milks that has been spoiled. It is in the fridge now. No one is buying it. It's due to the light out. I stay at Ahoma, so okay. So at Ahoma, so I'm not experiencing such cases. Yes, but this tech, like I'm talking about tech, this our job is really collapsing because of the light out, and I think the government should do something about it. Closing it now because it has to be shut down since we are not receiving any important thing from them. If only it will help us, and I think it's a good idea. Yes, because it's not improving. Even after another left the government to another political party, we are still experiencing it. And it is even much more than last year because per my experience in my job. So I think if handling it to a private company will help, then they should go ahead.
I can be because
we can't do anything to them as citizens. Only government can caution them. I agree that we hand it over to a private individual. That will help.
Private manner. Because of Penisika.
When you privatize it, the managers or those who control it will be vigilant, and then the money that goes into it, they will make good use of it. But because it is government this thing, they use it anyhow. They use the money anyhow, and we are not benefit from it. So if they privatize and someone is controlling it on his or her own way, they will be serious about it.
ECG for the end, me kakra me work and say, omo hwe omo adwuma na omo ye eyi na omo ha ye timamufo no because omo ma yes omo dundundundum light na sa na ade na the month ne so no de be ne ba omo tete anu mfiri mu but the same light be na ubetua but the light of mu be
our bills for the month
but 1 week na me man use light no ba bosome no so be ne ba the whole month ni nyina na ba eti ye be say EGC for ne de omo hwe omo adwuma na omo hwe adwuma ni yi se de be ya ye timamfo ne benya light de ye adwuma esa ye adwuma so esai
like affect education aspect. Like say in case you see and some doom light na ye hostel say ni any planter e betimi aboy amayede ya continue education aspect no into higher pa sa na ye kodantem ye ko class a ye nyan contribute to the master lecture into higher.
From the opinions gathered, residents of Kumasi are not happy with the electricity company of Ghana. But the question remains, what do we do with ECG? For Joy News, my name is Anna Boachidankwa-Yado, Kumasi.
And of course, we are live on X Spaces, we are live on YouTube, we are live on Facebook, myjoyonline.com, and of course, we are live on Joy 99.7 FM, and of course, here on Joy News. Now, let me bring in my guests as we start a discussion on this very important matter of the electricity company of Ghana. The Minister for Energy is represented here by Suleiman Abubakar. He's the Deputy Director of Power. Suleiman, you're welcome to this national dialogue. And of course, also in the studio is the Deputy Managing Director of ECG, Mr. David Asamoah, and we'll bring him on shortly once he joins us. Immediate past Managing Director of the Electricity Company of Ghana, Mr. Samuel Dubik Mahama. Mr. Mahama, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Of course. We also have in the studio, we'll also be bringing in engineer Jabez Amisa Arthur. He's joining us via Zoom. He chaired a committee that was set up by the Minister for Energy to digest or, to fine-tune or to understand the issues with ECG and then recommend the way forward. Mr. Jabez and Mr. Arthur, good evening, sir, and welcome to this dialogue. Right, we'll have him on very shortly. Of course, also the Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Association of Industries, Mr. Sepchu Makwabwa, will also be joining us on Zoom as well. And Maswell Kotoka, PRO for Netco, will also be joining us on Zoom. Collins Ajeman Sapom is also joining us. And Mr. Richard Anamu, former Director General of Ghana Ports and Harbors Authority. Mr. Anamu, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
And also in the studio here this evening is Dr. Ni Dakon Asante, former board member of PURC. Dr. Asante, good evening and welcome.
Good evening.
All right, so, and of course, plus you listening and watching us this evening, your comments are welcome via our social media handles on X Spaces, on YouTube, on Facebook, and of course, on myjoyonline.com. My name is Elton Bob. So let's get the ball rolling. Let me start with Mr. Samuel Dubik Mahama. I mean, ECG has been in the news for some time now. And I was telling my colleagues this morning on the Super Morning Show that if there's any government entity that's taking so much beating in the last 3 months, that will be ECG. From President Mahama to the Minister for Energy and then also to the Minister for Finance. The impression created here is that ECG has been so poorly managed that it will take a miracle to resuscitate it. Let me start with you. The kind of ECG you met when President Akufo-Addo appointed you and the kind of ECG you left behind.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak. And when you ask what I met, I was appointed on the 13th of May, 2022. When I took office, I had already been on the board, so I had a fair insight of what was going on in the company. So you decide to fix a few things or to find out what actually goes to the cracks. But the one major thing that was missing from the board, and of which I was part of the implementation committee because we wanted it to happen, was ECG didn't have a project management office. So at that point, you could realize that there are a whole lot of projects around, somewhere 10%, 8%. So there were a whole lot of projects that needed to be completed. But in 2022, when we got in, one of the things I mentioned to the board was that, look, there's too much work to be done, but there's not much money to do this work. This is because if you quite cast your mind back, in the first tenure of President Akufo-Addo, ECG was to be privatized.
Right.
So there was zero investment into the company.
Zero.
Zero. So all the works were aimed at what? Sending ECG into what? Privatization. Now, the whole PDS thing happened. It got botched after 8 months, 9 months. ECG reverted back. The country went into an election. Fast forward, 2021, I was on the board. 2022, I had the opportunity to serve as managing director. When I sat in the chair, the first thing you ask is to find out the status or the health check of the company.
Right.
When that came in, you could see that there was massive growth in the number of people in the number of customers, but it didn't reflect in the data that we had.
Meaning what exactly?
So you now have there was a system that was given to them called the CMS, the Commercial Management System. That was a World Bank project, but it had its own deficiencies. That billing system didn't have the capacity to take in the number of customers. So when it hit the 4.5 million mark, all the people that they were inserting as new customers were not dropping into the billing system. So they were hanging.
And so what? They were enjoying electricity for free?
So basically, if you don't find the person, how do you bill him? In your mind, you put them in the system, but the person comes, you can't find him in the system.
And this is ECG's own problem?
Yeah, that was the situation that I met. Again, there were a lot of discrepancies in the thinking around the company called ECG. When I say the thinking, what do I mean? With the data analytics brought to me by the PMO, the Project Management Office, pointed out that there were over 700 projects, electrical infrastructure projects that were outstanding, about 100 more in civil works, and in customer service, only 12. At that point in time, you would realize that the business side that is supposed to bring the money in is not really being looked at in terms of business, but the critical infrastructure is being made sure that it's available so that everybody can access. So what I then did was to have a good discussion with the board to tell them that, look, there's no critical new or 21st century utility that doesn't invest in how they interface with their customers. So we went on a very ambitious drive to change the narrative in terms of our customers and our customer relations.
But these challenges that you speak of now, I mean, when you were appointed, when you assumed office as managing director, these were not new to you because you had served as board member of ECG then.
I didn't say they were new to me. I said, when they all came to, it's different from when you are sitting at the board. You're a policy director. Then finally you are put in the main chair and then on a daily basis. There's one thing that I have learned in my 2 years, 4 months of occupying that chair is that the theory that Mike Tyson gave that you always have a plan until you enter the ring and you are hit in the nose. And then you realize that everything is thrown out. Because you can wake up in the morning, all systems go, everything is working perfectly. You're chugging along nicely. By 2 o'clock, there's fuel shortage here. There's this here, there's that. Now the question you ask yourself is, the cost of unsold energy. So what do? You have to, but you know, one of the things that we don't give credit for because most people don't have the backstory is that ECG was never ever at the table. ECG was never at the table in terms of revenue. Because ECG's revenue, when I joined the board, since time immemorial and everybody was talking, was always like this. There's no utilities revenue that flatlines.
Always on the same wavelength.
It was about 450, 500 million, 450, 500 million. But thanks be, the minister in his last interview said what? 1.5 billion.
Right.
1.5 billion is no mean feat. To move a company that was never at the table, because at that point, everybody had to carry ECG. And in carrying ECG, what did it mean? You understand? Now, the main way, or the single way for you to collect revenue is through meters.
Right.
Metering. Now, the question is, what's the lifespan of a prepaid meter? That's one thing most people don't know. Prepaid meters do expire.
And then when they do, I mean, there's no way of checking the consumption level
it is not
of consumers.
So PURC will do a beautiful job of giving ECG a tariff. ECG will fire the tariff into the meter, but you are enjoying 2013 meter. Unfortunately for maybe Sule is on the 2022 meter, so he will receive the new tariff. Most of the meters are all, prepaid metering started under President Kufuor.
We'll come to the way forward.
I'm building the backstory
so that I can allow
I'm building the backstory for you. So, in deciding to embark on the digitization journey, we called a few people in place. There was an unsolicited proposal which was going to be even considered under PDS, which we saw went through the whole thing. We changed how we procured meters. We changed how we installed meters. As at the time that I got into office, ECG had a huge lack of meters in the system, and ECG's installation was about 2,500 meters a month. As at the time I was leaving office, they were such an efficient machine that they were doing about 100,000 meter installations in a month. All of these things require investment.
Right.
You cannot have a multi-billion-dollar or billion CD industry in Ghana and not invest in it. I sometimes hear the whole conversation around it, and then you realize that, look, yes, ECG's debt. Oh, this is ECG's debt. But nobody fails to calculate what portion of the debt falls under, what do you call it? Forex losses. What is the portion? Because every single implement in ECG is in USD. From the you buy electricity in dollars, you sell it in cedis. By the time you are going back to procure those dollars to pay, what's the forex rate? You come into the office in the morning, you are rich. By the time you close, you're poor. For example, last year around this same time, it was February, when the whole digitization process ended, ECG went cashless, the revenue was coming in. The board then said, you know what, those projects that are 5 years old, 6 years old, 3 years old, 2 years old, that are lacking materials and everything, there has been no investment into the company. So we need to procure all of those things so that those projects are completed so that it will enhance service delivery. Take an area like Chado, Sapeman, Amasaman, or Yarifa. And to use a better description, as I say all the time, we are slight Ghanaians. We were brought up to hide everything we have. So the conversation is, oh, you are rich, you have money. He says, no, I don't have money. But he's building a house. Because he's building the house, he doesn't want to accept. He's gradually gets there. He's done building the house. Calls an electrician or one or two people, doesn't go through the right channel. He's joined to the grid. Now, a distribution transformer that you thought was supposed to carry about 15 homes, it's now carrying about 20, 25. Now, the people in the area are complaining about, what do you call it?
Low current.
Low voltage, that's what they say, yeah. What do you have to do? And there's always a complaint. And don't forget, low voltage is loss of revenue. So you have to inject another transformer, you have to build new lines, you have to do this. Where are you going to get all of these things to do? So if you look at the table, one of my major problems that made me decide that I was not going to speak to that final interim report was, one, I was not given a hearing.
We'll come to that. If you just allow me, so that I can let the other guests also have a bite on this preliminary comments on this matter. So maybe I'll give you just 1 minute to wrap up, and then I can go to Suleiman.
So in going forward, what I'll say is, as at the time I was leaving office, I can say for a fact that the company was in very good and healthy situation because
very good.
The board had, in fixing or in going forward, the board had made us ring fence a certain amount of money from our daily revenue to service the lines for all of these, these improvements that we had to do. And then also, the board had also come up with innovative ways for us to be speaking to government to find a way to address our tax issues. And I'll come to all of that.
Of course, we'll do that. Let me bring in Suleiman Abubakar. He is the Deputy Director in charge of Power at the Ministry of Energy. What is the ministry's understanding of the state of ECG?
Well, thank you. As you well know, from the policy perspective, it is the wish of government that we have uninterrupted, supply of power. Petroleum products, are affordable, so that as we see, we keep the lights on, and then we also get, vehicles moving. So having said that, that is possible when we have an efficient, working energy sector. And as you know, Ghana's energy sector, it used to be vertically, integrated. When we started the power sector reforms, all towards, efficiency, improvements, we unbundled them. ECG being in the last, segment, that's the taking care of distribution. So when we say we want an efficient energy sector, you want efficient generation, transmission, for that matter, efficient distribution. Efficient distribution would mean a lot of the things that have been described as inefficient now being efficient. Unfortunately, to get to your question, we have a situation right now where we do not have, a fully efficient whole value chain. So if you take the distribution segment, we have lots of issues there, and these are what is manifesting in some of the challenges that we have now. So in a net effect, this is how we see it. But the Ministry of Energy, who sets policy for the sector, I mean, as I said, as constantly reviewing our notes with respect to how do we enable, how do we create an enabling environment through policy to get the distribution segment functioning as well. The same goes for transmission and distribution.
But the minister's comments, I mean, sought to create the impression that ECG has been deliberately run down. And I'm wondering how he came to such a conclusion.
Well, as I've explained, it is not just the ministry that sees ECG in its current state as, for want of a better word, performing suboptimally. The average Ghanaian also sees that, well, you don't want suboptimal voltages. You want regulator approved performance indices that meets what we all expect, so that we can have our lights on and all the time. So if you do not see that, obviously we would all conclude that there's a lot of inefficiencies. I want to put it in a different light from what the minister says.
Dr. Ninda Kwansante, is that, I mean, you've heard the former MD. I mean, he's laid the foundation quite clearly for everybody to see. You've heard the minister's representative. You've said on the board of PURC before, so obviously you had a lot of dealings with the ECG. Let me hear your initial comments on the state of affairs with a major entity like ECG.
Thank you and good evening. ECG is basically the heart of the electricity sector. I mean, the generation is important because without generation, you can't have the electricity. But at the end of the day, ECG is the one that all the customers deal with. They are the ones who supply the power to us. They are the ones we are supposed to pay. And because of that, they essentially oil the wheels of the whole energy sector. So when ECG is sick, the whole power sector is sick. And unfortunately, the whole power sector is sick because ECG is sick. As for the problems, there are many, and we can recount all of them. But at the very heart of it, and I think the former MD alluded to the fact that the revenue that was being collected was insufficient for a number of reasons. But no matter what the reasons are, as long as you do not collect the revenue that is required to run the sector, nothing else will work properly. At a point, we were collecting slightly below 50% of the amount of money required to pay everybody.
Even as you speak, the finance minister says that ECG is only able to do 64%.
So it's maybe improved slightly. But 64%, I think for all of us, if we only paid 64% of our salaries, we probably would have major issues with
that. But that also defeats ECG's whole commitment to say that we will reduce losses by at least 30%.
Well, I mean, when it comes to losses, we have a poor track record in measuring what our losses are. When you look at the actual cash, as they say, cash is king. If you have bills of 1 million and you're only collecting 400,000 or 620,000, whatever percentage you say you are collecting is not so important. The fact is, you're only able to pay 62% of the bills required to keep the sector running. And that is the reality. We see IPPs constantly saying, pay us. The money is not there. So they are not paid. And then government has to come in and pay. Government doesn't manufacture money. They'll take money from your pocket, from my pocket, in the form of taxes, or go and borrow from somebody else. And we all know what borrowing has done to us as a country. So the sum total of it is that if the money is not coming in, for whatever reason, we have a problem. And sadly, we do have a problem.
All right. Let me allow Mr. Anamu. We will come to the issue of the shipping concerns and, of course, procurement. Mr. Usu Ajiman. But I mean, you are also consumers. I mean, you are customers of ECG. So let me pick your initial talks on the state of ECG before I also bring in Mr. Jabesha, Mr. Arata, and the man from the IPPs. Let me start with you, Mr. Usu Ajiman. Yourself, yeah. So, I mean, you are a consumer. You are a customer of the ECG. I'm wondering whether you're happy with the way they are managing their business.
Well, when it comes to, yes, we've all been there. We've visited. And there's meter issues. I've been a victim, or I don't know how to use, where my meter was expired or whatever. And there was a day, I was there, I had about 500, on my meter. Then I was there and I was called from home that the lights were off. So I quickly gave money to my son, sent money to my son to go and buy ECG. Then he went there with 350 cedis. He bought the 350, he got home, the thing was still off. And they were telling us that there was a negative. I said, how can I spend 1,000 cedis within 3 days? Right? So now I was owing. No, it started like, there was a time, about 4 weeks, the meter wasn't reading or something. So I said, this meter. So I started giving my son every week, we'll go and buy 200. Because I knew that the day that they will come back, they may sweep everything. So about 4 weeks, 250, 4 weeks. Then I was there and I was told that the light gone off. We went there, paid 500, and they said that we were still at the negative. Right? Then we had to call people. The ECG, when you call them, they have a number. They will tell you they are coming, they are coming, they are coming.
They never came.
They will never come. So we were there and they said they will come and change the meter. So they brought some glassy whatever. And when they brought that meter, there were units on it, about 400. That unit never came. So maybe anyway you are not there. So if I was going to take my money back today. So we are all consumers.
Of course.
I mean, if you live in Accra for a very long time, light-ups are not something that you can contend.
Okay.
So that is where they come in. That I'm a consumer.
Of course, and I'll come to your area shortly. But clearly, the acting in you is beginning to emerge on this show. Mr. Anamu, you also have similar stories to tell.
Not really, as far as direct, because I live in Tema, and I think sections of Tema, I think we're fortunate to have some of the new meters, so to speak. But I think there's no, I mean, I don't think anybody's in doubt, or of course the whole country, as to the relevance and importance of ECG in our life. I mean, without ECG, supplying power to us, I do not know how this country will look like. GPHA is a major consumer of electricity. Major consumer of electricity. I mean, GPHA takes the power and block, and then redistributes it in the whole port space. Yeah. And GPHA operates 24 hours, non-stop. I mean, vessels are arriving, cargo is being delivered, I mean, from the vessels and restocked. Containers are sorted out in the night, throughout the night. So the 24-hour economy has been the hallmark of GPHA. Therefore, electricity is very, very, very
important.
And I have said a number of times when I'm talking about ECG is that I see ECG as an institution that has so many customers who have lined up in demand, but they are not able to meet their demand. They don't need, ECG doesn't need to spend money advertising for customers. No. I mean, customers are already in the queue.
Because they enjoy monopoly. They enjoy that monopoly.
Well,
there's no other in that same space.
Well, that could be one of the reasons. I think but the reason being that the demand is high, population is growing, living standards are growing, and therefore the need for ECG to live up to expectation is very, very important. It's very, very high. Okay. So I think that this problem that we're facing with ECG is something that is of major concern. I mean, both from the private homes and, of course, from the industry. My little experience within the first few days is the fact that you want to buy credit, even though it's supposed to be one of the latest meters, and it says meter cannot be reached. Something like that.
I can explain that to you.
Yes.
Because it's something that has happened now after. Which is
it has always been there, So, so it means that there's something new, and you go to the vendors. That's if you cannot load by yourself, then you go to the vendors, and the vendors say we are facing the same problem. Meanwhile, it's getting to midnight. What do you do? So I think that the issue of ECG is a producer who has excess demand online. And they're not able to meet.
All right. Let me go on Zoom now and bring in some other, parties to this particular matter. Mr. Jabez and Mr. Arthur. Mr. Arthur, if you can hear me and if you can unmute, good evening and welcome to the dialogue.
I think this week on.
Thank you.
Great, and it's great to have you. I also shortly will bring in Mr. Ametokpo. He is with the IPPs. But let me start with you, Mr. Arthur. You've heard a power entity before, We Power Authority. You've heard the issues with the ECG. For you, what could be the major challenge that confronts ECG that requires immediate attention?
I think that, as one of the panelists has already alluded to, there is no business that can survive if you are incurring the level of losses that are being reported by ECG. You can't lose 30% of your commodity and expect to run a profit. So if you ask me, that is one of the first things. That is a major thing. And then there is also the sense, I'm sure you have alluded to some of that, that the practices in the company needs a lot more discipline. The company needs discipline, both of its staff and respect for its procedures and so on. That is the general sense that I get.
But can you break down? Can you break down the discipline aspect for me so that we can better appreciate it?
I think that some of what we have heard is whether the company follows its own procedures or lays down procedures for the things it needs to do. How the processes within the company are followed and abided by. Those are things. And simple things like reporting and so on, they are all indications of the level of discipline within the company. And many people are talking about that and complaining that something needs to be done. It needs that level of discipline before things can get better. As a professional myself, it pains me to hear the kinds of things that are being said about a company like ECG, because it should be a shining light of how we as Ghanaians can run our companies.
But indeed, where will you place the blame? Is it political interference? Have we had incompetent people in very responsible positions at the ECG? Where will you place the blame?
I think that a lot of people have talked about political interference. But what I would say is that political interference is everywhere, okay? And it is the duty of top management to keep political interference to a minimum and away from it. If you are a CEO and you cannot protect the company from external influences that let it do things that it shouldn't do, then maybe you should ask yourself if you are in the right place.
But Mr. Atta, is it that easier said than done? You've been in such position before. I'm wondering how you were able to survive in the mix of some of these pressure that's brought to bear on the chief executive, especially when you are appointed by the president and you need certain things done. To what extent can you say no?
You can't also do things that will bring the company down. So it's a very delicate thing. How do you manage it? But you have to be able to point out to the person who is giving you the instruction that this will not work and this will not inure to the benefit of the organization. If you need to find another way to accomplish the goal for him, you have to do that. But that is your job. There's a wish that you do this. But if it cannot work, if it cannot serve the company well, you have to find a solution for it. There's no excuse saying that it was ordered from above. When those of us in public service, we must understand that we serve ultimately for the people of Ghana. And so what is best for the people of Ghana must be factored in every time. If the instruction will not serve the country, you have to find a way to either change it or get the person to understand it, or one way or another. You can't just do it and say that it was ordered from above.
You had the responsibility of advising on the way forward for ECG. Walk us through the recommendations that you've put before the minister. What informed these three areas that you've asked government to focus attention on and come up with one to drive the future of ECG?
What we did was we engaged so many people. I think in the end, the Secretariat was telling us that we had spoken to 295 individuals and 35 organizations to understand what their view was. And what we did was, first of all, to compile what we believe to be the challenges that were undermining the efficient performance of ECG. So we identified these challenges, and then we looked at all the models of private sector participation to see how well they address the challenges. And therefore had charts to assess each of them, which ones will address the challenges we face, and how how easy will it be for them to address these challenges? And then that is the basis we worked on. And then we also looked at, for every option, there's a strong point, there's a weak point. There's a pro, there's a con. So what we did was, for government to make a good decision, it needs to have a greater insight as to what is trading, what is good about this one, what is not so good, and so that the choice is made on an informed basis. So that is what we sought to do.
And for you, which one should be given priority? I mean, all the three recommendations, I see private sector participation running through all of them. You are certain that ECG cannot be managed by public appointees, like, for example, people appointed by the president or the energy minister?
Well, from what we have heard, it is possible for the system to work if certain conditions are met. But if those conditions are, we have talked about one of them already, that we have said that the CEO must be able to withstand external influences that are not going to inure to the benefit of the organization. And if there's a weakness in doing that, then probably the only solution is to have a private sector entity that will not listen to those instructions. I've heard people also say that interference from the outside must be curtailed and people must stop interfering from the outside. We as Ghanaians must decide, are we willing to allow ECG to work well? And are we willing to leave it alone to do the work well, or appoint somebody who's capable and competent and leave him to do the work well? If we do that, fine. But if we can't do that, and then the only way to stop the interference is to probably appoint a private sector entity, and that won't tolerate these things. The third point of what we have seen is this, that the system, the structure of ECG that had been operated up to now, if I am in charge of a village or a town and my losses go above what is expected, I don't get penalized. I just report my losses have gone up, my losses are 38% or whatever, and that is it, which a private entity will not do. If I have appointed you to run the network in a town for me, and I'm expecting losses of 18%, and your losses go to 25%, you are either going to have to explain, or you are going to be replaced, which is not part of that kind of performance monitoring and accountability. It has not been part of ECG structure up to now.
Right.
And if you ask me, I would be asking any incoming MD to have that throughout the system, because without that, without the accountability, the problems will just continue.
So briefly, currently as we speak, the public sector, in this case governments and government role in ECG, it should have no business in the way forward for ECG.
Well,
in terms of management and delivering on this mandate.
On two levels. One, either we empower the MD such that he can withstand external interferences, or appoint people who can withstand external interferences, and keep it to what is reasonable and logical and beneficial to the organization and to the service that they are supposed to deliver.
All right. Those who work under ECG, and they call themselves the Public Utilities Workers Union, they are vehemently opposed to these recommendations. Timothy Nyame, good evening and welcome to the dialogue. If you can unmute for me, Mr. Nyame Timothy of PURC, good evening and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and good evening to you.
The committees of the firm believe that great. The committee is of the firm believe that these recommendations, these three areas that they're asking government to explore, will be the game changer for the ECG. You say that that cannot be true. Why?
So thank you very much, comrade. I'm sure we sent our position paper to the chairman, to our chairman, Engineer Sata, stating the problems of ECG, which they actually admitted in their response, in the interaction they have with us, when the rest of the stakeholders. But unfortunately, their recommendation fell short of looking at the recommendation that PU gave to the committee. And so have been trying so much hard to find where they had their recommendation from. Because though they accepted or they actually alluded to the fact of the issue that we raised, they were short of, they couldn't actually use those issues that we raised for possible recommendations to the minister. That's why we are actually very worried. And in his submission speech, judges evening, he's saying that they need a managing director or CEO who can be able to crack the whip. So we are saying that it is the responsibility of government to actually appoint a managing director that they know can be courageous enough to lead in the transformation agenda of ECG. So giving the entity to a private sector should not be the way to go. We've highlighted those things to the committee. Of course, this morning we also granted a press interview to our members.
And what should be the way? What should be the way, Mr. Nyame?
The way should be government should appoint a CEO who should show direction. If he is not able to show that direction, he should be given the exit and another person appointed. We are saying that ECG is a public entity and not only for necessarily for profit, but it's an economic and social entity. That must be guided in that direction. I can just recall when Managing Director Dubik was in office, our caution to him was to ensure that the ECG remain a public entity. We are saying that not only necessarily because of the workers of ECG, but for the sovereignty of the nation and the customers that we serve. So if you have identified inefficiencies, and thankfully you have identified all those inefficiencies, what you have to do is to tackle it head on. So it is not for you to come and bring a private sector. And you see, even in Africa, you can see where we have made investment in a private sector has come participated in electricity distribution. It has been so much, disastrous. Their performance has not been the best. They are just, we can name them and name them and name them, especially when it comes to energy sector. So I am appealing that let us tread cautiously. Let us appoint leaders who can show the way, sanction those who are not able to perform, and reward those who are performing. And also see, they have identified the problems of the energy sector. And I think that privatizing it should not be the way to go at all. So, PU, for that matter, TUC, is sending signal to government, letting government be aware that, look, privatizing ECG should not be the way. We have spread out the way, and government should take a bold decision. We've seen a document, and of course, when you were making your commentary, we saw document of our donor agencies who are giving us recommendations. Comrade, these things have happened before, where state agencies or state institutions were given to private individuals. And today, those companies are all on their knees. So they cannot continue to suggest these alternatives for us and quickly buy into it. It is a high time for us to actually look at our own homegrown policies and crack the whip on the leaders so that we can be able to manage our own enterprise. And not for electricity company. All right.
If I can just quickly come in so that I can bring in my guests on the other matters. I mean, I understand that Mr. Jabez and Mrs. Committee met with PU, but your recommendation did not find expression in the final document that was presented to the minister, because per the three recommendations, I mean, there's private sector participation at least in all the recommendations to government, meaning that your concerns, as far as you are aware, were not captured?
Can I say something?
Our concerns were actually accepted. But for me, it is surprising to see the chairman's recommendation to the minister being at variance with though they upheld our concerns, knowing, even this evening he has just said that, look, there's a lot of inefficiencies that need to be tackled. But they rather suggested the other way around, that, look, you need a private sector to come and turn around the fortune of ECG.
So you want,
ECG
so,
is not
so you want government to...
Any private individual can just come and want to just invest. That's all that we are trying to send signals to.
Mr. Nyame, so you want the president to reject the recommendation of the Mr. Arthur's, committee?
Oh, the committee report is to the minister. It's not to the president. I'm sure the honorable minister commissioned a committee.
The minister is expected to advise the president on the way forward, and I'm sure his advice will be based on the recommendations by the committee. That is why I extended it to the president.
Well, so all that I want to say is that the position that the union have taken is a position that is the best for the nation. You cannot surrender the sovereignty of the nation to some group of individuals. Today they can be your friends. Please, tomorrow they may not be your friends. And we have said history is there to guide us. Look, we have gone through these processes and it has never helped us. So please, let us tread cautiously when we are doing this. We are not actually disobeying government, but we are always saying signal to government that, look, giving ECG to private sector, either wholly or in part or in segment that they have spread out, should not be the way at all. It's a no-no area.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Nyame. I'll come back to that. Let me allow Mr. Jabez some intervention that he wants to make, and then we'll get into the elephant in the room.
Well, yes, we did have extensive consultations with the PU and the TUC, and we share the same concerns about what the challenges are. You remember that what I said was this, that it pains me as a Ghanaian professional that we can't seem to manage this, even though we should be able to. And I was saying that it was a decision for Ghanaians to make. Do we want to set up ECG, appoint people, and give them the freedom to run this thing properly? And I said, notice, Mr. Nyame, what I'm saying is that if we as Ghanaians are unable or unwilling to do that, then probably the only thing to do is to allow the private sector, because when the private sector takes over, then they wouldn't tolerate anything from outside. That I did make that point. Then I did also say that part of the challenge is that the units lower down in ECG must be held accountable for what they do and for their performance, which right now is not the case. And if you bring in private sector, even at that level, they will tend to do that. And so that's the. And for me, it's a decision that we as Ghanaians have to make. Do we want to set ECG up and leave it alone to work properly, or fire the people if they don't? Or if we are unable or unwilling to do that, then we leave ourselves no other choice. That's what I'm saying.
Let me find out, did you consult Mr. Dubek Mahama during your consultations?
Yes, we've had extensive conversations with him this morning.
This morning?
Yes.
Not when you were soliciting views on the way forward?
It's part of soliciting the views on the way forward, yes.
Because your reports are already out, that's why I asked whether he was consulted as the immediate past MD of ECG.
He has been consulted. I mean, there are a number of people who we have not been able to consult yet, and we'll do so, or when the opportunity comes, we'll do so, because what has been submitted is an interim indication of where we are thinking.
All right, Mr. Jabez and Mr. Amata, I'll come back to you. Mr. Mahama?
Yeah.
So the matter of consultation is closed.
On which one?
On Mr. Arthur's committee.
Oh, yeah.
I know that the one you have issues with is the one that took place at the port, right?
The one that says the final interim report on
exactly.
Procurement.
The procurement.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's zoom in on that particular matter. But before I do so, I'm getting text message. Somebody saying that it is not true that ECG didn't have a project management office go to our branch office at Kwame Nkrumah Circle, and the name of that place is Project Office. We have had and still have directors of a project. It's also saying that it's also not true that customers management system given by the World Bank was capacity deficient. He says internationally, he intentionally stopped paying for the service fee to the providers so he could bring in his own firm to undertake it. Do you want to react to this?
You see, that clearly is somebody from the ICT Directorate. They wouldn't like me. It's fine. That's one unit. That's one unit that I'm not expecting them to tell the truth about the company, and that's fine. But the numbers speak for itself. When we were on CMS, what the revenue was and what the revenue is now. So it's fine. I'm not going to debate this person on he said, she said, from where I am sitting. Plus, it's faceless. Person should face me, and then we'll use data to support the point. Right now, currently, they're at 1.5 billion. Were they doing same? Tariff was not increased by 150% within that 2 years.
It was increased by over 100%.
But when I got in, over 100, yes, but not 150%. When I got in was in May 2022. I left in September 2024. My work speaks for itself. So if they want to, if you heard what Mr. Namu was saying right now, clearly that's a peeved person. These same people are
but there is just a project office.
The project office operated in silos. It's in committees. You understand? When I got there, they were about to launch something called SAP. They had the effort PMO. That's what they called it. They had different ways of doing it. But as I'm saying to you, PMO was set up properly with an office to sit on top of it, with a general manager in charge. So if that's the person's opinion, so be it. That's fine. But to go to the crux of the matter, or what exists now, Mr. Namu complained about something.
Right.
These are the little pettiness within ECG that makes the company not grow. He just said something that he's trying to purchase. It is telling him that the system is not able to recognize. ECG system was operating in the cloud, okay? The ICT team were saying, we have a data center. Let's use the data center. If you compare data center, calculations and cloud calculations, sometimes we just try to be mischievous. You cannot operate or serve 6 million or 5 million customers from a data center. The traffic alone. Cloud computing skills is out of this world.
Right.
So if you compare a data center, if you're trying to compare data center linkage to cloud, it's like saying we are going to the Olympics to swim, and you go to Izulezu and see this small boy there, you go, because this small boy can swim, he can represent Ghana at the Olympics. Or maybe, because what you need in the cloud also includes AI tools. When you have bare metal servers, the rate at which traffic hits it is also going to be difficult. But as he said, if the customer experience is bad, the IT team always complained about, we had this, we had that. Look, we found a way to go beyond that. They should stop living in the past.
Okay.
If we need to make a case for a non-privatization, they need to accept that the company is growing. The level of investment needed for the company to grow is important.
But privatization, would that be the way to go? Look, at least according to this committee that was set up by the minister.
I had a very fruitful conversation with the team this morning. I gave them my insight on operations with ECG. Look, the rate of forex losses are a major concern.
And that is beyond you.
That is beyond you. And also the point is this, I was also talking to my elder brother here from PURC about the fact that this is how much the national grid says we need 4,800 or what was it now? 4,008 for national grid at peak. And peak starts from 6 to 10. When you hear that, what do you think? You believe that's all ECG's consumption, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, ECG consumes only 2,400, at best 2,500.
The rest?
There are other industry players. So if that is what ECG needs, and ECG has contracted PPAs to a certain amount, then there has to be a holistic conversation. The business model must change. For example, you now have something you call a cash waterfall mechanism, where at the cash waterfall meeting, or now you hear the rhetoric that at the PwC audit, they said ECG has 92 accounts.
Different accounts.
It's too small.
It's more than 92.
It's actually too small because the account that you use to collect money in Asankregua is not the same account that you use to collect money in Accra. But ECG can have a single, consolidated or holding
that all other accounts will go into
because after they collect it from all the rural areas and everything, commercial bank will collect, this one will collect, everything comes to sit in one major, account.
But you are accused of not complying with the directive of the PURC, went your own way, maintained several accounts, despite your regulator, direct.
That is the correction I am making now. That my regulator needed more explanation on the fact that collection account is different from a holding account. And the holding account was there.
So the regulator didn't understand the operations.
You see, when you write without not sitting down with the person to actually go through the full, and that was one thing that was missing. To sit with the company to actually have a firm and better understanding of the company's operational difficulties. For example, when we had the proper digital platform, we realized the meters that were not working for us to hit whatever we needed to hit. There were write-ups to that effect that, look, the meters that have hit the 10-year mark, the 15 mark, the 12 are all not working. How are you supposed to sit down and say you're not going to invest? Are you also going to sit down and say people who need transformers, who need this and that, you're not going to invest? You can't say that because the cost of unsold energy is very high. So yes, let's also not forget one thing.
Perhaps maybe if I can get some clarity from Dr. Ansah. Dr. Ansah, the claim here is that you gave directive without knowing the full facts.
Well, I mean, there are always going to be different perspectives, but the point is that they have now complied and they hadn't complied before. So there was a way to comply.
By the time you were insisting on them maintain a single account, I mean, the MD's argument is that, it was practically impossible.
No, it wasn't, because what I'm saying...
I didn't say that. I said the account was there, but there are collection accounts.
From different accounts.
And it's still happening. So if you see the minister's latest directive, he said, sweep it into a what?
One account.
Holding. He changed the term from collection to holding.
So the issue is that in the end, something was done, which could have been done right at the beginning.
It was being done. That's what I'm saying. It was being done with Fidelity Bank. It was being done.
So it had not been done, and it could have been done. That is all I'm saying. So there was a non-compliance which was rectified. I don't want to go into too much of the details because
there was a lot of non-compliance with some of the directives that you asked ECG to, even including the cash waterfall mechanism and the distribution of the money.
Intimately involved.
To the extent that you were even threatening to deal with him.
You see, I was intimately involved in the cash waterfall, so I could talk in detail about that.
Right.
But sufficient to say that the main concern was that money that should go into the cash waterfall was being diverted. There's no ambiguity about that. It was happening. And the one account was meant to prevent that from happening.
The diversion they explained in their response to you, you found that unacceptable?
Diversion is diversion. We used to meet regularly. ECG was the custodian. Nobody took their money from them. So they were supposed to declare the total amount, and then it would be shared accordingly. There were always exceptions and special cases made. There was no need for them to unilaterally withhold any amount of money. That is all in the past. I believe the compliance is there now. You know, we need to move forward. I don't think we need to go and litigate what went wrong 5 years, 2 years, 3 years.
But the impression was created that there was so much bad blood between the PURC and the ECG that everybody was operating on a different wavelength.
That bad. I mean, I must admit I had left at that point, but it wasn't that bad. You see, the role of PURC is to give directives. When they are not complied with, the role of the PURC is to implement sanctions. You don't need bad blood for that to happen. It's like you tell your child to go and tidy his room, he doesn't do it. You punish him. It doesn't mean you are fighting with your child. It is just the way things are done. So PURC implemented a sanction. That is the job they have to do. When we give an instruction, you don't comply, we are required to give a sanction. Otherwise, we're ineffective.
Do we bring in the private sector now?
The private sector can help. I think that has really been indicated that there are some challenges which the public sector is not managing well. One of them being government interference. That is one. But the other thing is, like I said, the collection is not good enough.
If there's government interference, why don't go and hold the one who is interfering accountable? Rather deal with the person who is powerless and sometimes...
answered that question. When you are the MD, you have to take the heat. If you can't take the heat, what do they say?
You get out.
Exactly. It's as simple as that. Me, I've not been an MD before, so I can talk. The bottom line is that is the nature of the game. I was on a board and I resigned.
Because of what?
He could also resign, and he did.
You resigned because of interference?
I'm not going into that. My point is that I'm not asking why he resigned. Resignation is the absolute end of it. If you can't handle it, for whatever reason, you go. The point is that when you take a job, you do it. You don't make excuses. And I say we should use the Black Stars model. We appoint a coach. He didn't qualify us to AFCON. We are all shouting at him. In this case, we didn't sack him. But we've sacked many coaches for non-performance. You had in your display a number of MDs. Which one of them was sacked for non-compliance? Not one of them. We have changed MDs for different reasons. But we've never changed one because you are only collecting 50% of the revenue. What company can survive with that level of performance?
Right.
But we don't do anything about it. We change him because the government has changed. We change him because maybe he didn't do what we wanted.
Mr. Adobek, did you resign because of political interference?
Why do you want me to spoil my book? I'm going to write my book.
I was going to give us a teaser.
No, let me write my book. When I write my book, it will be in the book, and then at the end of the day,
I remember at some point, I remember in one of the interviews, you said, I mean, the pressure was getting too much. This is getting out of hand.
So the thing
and
is,
then you resign.
You are given a responsibility, but there is no time for you to achieve what you are. Like what he said, you want to grow money from 500 to a billion plus, but yet you are not allowed to invest. You are not able to borrow. You are not able to leverage on the cash. Look, there is no utility in the world that spends what it actually collects. None. Only in Ghana, you collect what you've collected. You have to bring it. They use the Gadgetsburg approach of development. You take what it comes, goes into the center, then Kofi, this is yours. Ama, this is yours. Yao, this is yours. You understand? But over there, with my interactions, it's assumed because you're a social being. Today you are going to buy, you've decided that you're buying power 1,000 cedis. You have family problems, you have this, you have that. You end up buying what? Maybe 200 or 300. That doesn't mean that you won't come back and buy that 1,000.
Right.
It is like this. It goes up and down. So now, what they then now do is you are believed to get, they do what is called the bridge financing. You collect, you are forward advanced the money based on what you are about to collect, and then there's a reconciliation at the end of what? The year. For example, as we sit here now, what we are doing now in running the utility is bring all the 1.5 billion into the center. We will share it for you. Okay, ECG now, it's agreed that probably ECG will take only 200. The question now is, with the 200 you are giving to ECG, is it enough to maintain operations? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But the conversation at hand is this. How much does it cost, or how much do you need to capitalize a bank in Ghana now? 400
million cedis.
You have 1.5 billion, and you can't leverage it on the banks? This is cash. This is not book money. This is cash.
But so, not your cash.
No, you are not getting my point. Let me land the point. The cash is with ECG. So maybe proverbially you can say it's ECG's cash. But if everybody is to agree and say, drop 400 here, drop 400 here, drop 400 here, maybe on even fixed deposits, or even on let's push this even into government treasury bills. Look, we haven't finished exploring all the options. That's what I will say.
All right.
And I agree with
Dr. Santos.
Yeah, we haven't finished exploring all the options. If you have cash, cash is king. Find a way to leverage on it to make sure that everything works.
But you agreed on the formula for sharing, and you want to hold on to the cash?
I'm not saying no. I'm not saying holding on to the cash. You are getting me wrong. I'm proposing something.
All right.
That, listen, based on the cash flow coming in, there's an assumption. Do you understand?
Right.
If all of you are at a table and you agree, or you are seeing the trajectory of growth based on A, B, C, and D, and you can agree to it or you can attest to it that this is what is expected. For example, when we started on the up and up in 2023, July, August. Before then, ECG at the table had sat down with almost all the IPPs, agreed on a flat rate, agreed on what their PPA should look like, because we said, we can't afford you at this rate. Let's speak to your lenders. Can you massage your expectation so that your lenders can have a fixed amount that they can expect on a monthly basis? When that was agreed upon, since that day till the February of 2024, ECG stayed on its mandate to them.
Right.
ECG reneged on its mandate to the SOEs and shortchanged some of the SOEs and PURC and Gridco and Co. Because there was an instruction that ECG should purchase liquid fuel. Because
from the finance ministry?
Yes, to purchase liquid fuel. But now, that's a conversation that if the letter is written to only one person, and the others don't know about it,
they don't get to know what is going on.
They will believe. So they were actually writing how they were
Dr. Asante, just a few minutes so that I can go to Suleiman. But let me also recognize Mr. Kojopoku. He's an energy expert. Mr. Kojopoku, good afternoon. Good evening and welcome to the show. Also is Dr. Kwabena Nyaku-Otu from the trade, he's in charge of research and policy at the Trade Union Congress. Dr. Nyaku, I will come to just bear with me for some few minutes. Dr. Asante, you want to make a quick intervention and then I can allow Suleiman to come in.
Essentially, a lot of what he's saying is accurate. The problem is that when you starve ECG, they admit it's a problem. But what about when you starve Gridco? The starvation of Gridco funds is the single reason why we have a lot of load shedding in Ghana.
We understand at some point VRA was finding it difficult to even pay salaries because
yes, but
the money from ECG was not coming.
What happens is when the grid goes, nobody gets electricity. But you see, we are aware of ECG because they are the ones we see.
Right.
But when the grid line goes, the whole system goes. The generators trip, ECG gets no power whatsoever.
Okay.
So we have to realize that the power system is very integrated. Everybody is important. You can't say Kofi is more important than Ama because we are all in a chain.
Okay.
So when there's 1.4 billion, we have to recognize that that money is needed by other people. So if for any reason we shortchange them, there are consequences.
All right. Mr. Suleiman Abuakar, Deputy Director and General of Power. So where are we in terms of advising the President or Cabinet on what to do with the ECG?
Thank you. As you are aware, the committee has submitted an interim report, which presupposes that there's a bit of work going on. The Honourable Minister has received it. There are the preliminary recommendations. Obviously, it's not just one option, a couple of options.
Three, actually.
Yes, 3 options. So, and within it, it's also the advice to do some further, analysis through stakeholder engagements. So I saw you earlier ask why some were being engaged now. And even beyond that, going to Cabinet, there's going to be interministry work and other stakeholders in implementing these recommendations. It's at that point that we will drill down on the option. So if you ask, do you mean timelines?
Yes.
Well, timelines depend on the option chosen.
Because government appears to be in a hurry when it's come to ECG.
The Honourable Minister has made that clear. And we want to do, but we want to also hasten, surely. So you're looking at least 18 months.
18 months before you take a decision?
No. I mean, this is part of the decision-making process. But, we'll have to engage. This preliminary work that has been done, Honourable Minister has actually indicated we need to, in drilling down these things, there's some further work that needs to be done on some cost-benefit analysis. You don't just hand over ECG or anything to the private sector without setting some baselines, knowing your assets, their worth, and negotiating. And depending on the option chosen, if you're going to maybe have zones or concessions, all of these have to be, be factored in. And critically, the transaction advisory service, and then the engagement of transaction advisory service. So you're not looking at, all of these things could take, give or take, 12 to 18 months before we get the PSP going. So yes, cabinets, once agreed, would be briefed, and following that decision, then all these things will be will
follow. Okay, Dr. Kwabena Nyaku-Otu, Director of Research and Policy at the Trade Union Congress. TUC has made its position clear on this matter. Quite clearly, consultation is still ongoing. What do you want factored into the final presentation to the President?
Thank you for having me, and greetings to your panelists. Dr. Asante, hello. I think that when I listen very clearly to some of the conversation, I think some of the people who have managed ECG in recent past really didn't understand the regulatory environment in which they found themselves. So they think that the monies they have collected, which is supposed to be what we call the revenue requirement, covering the entire value chain, electricity or energy sector value chain, they think that it is for ECG and that they could use it for whatever, they could leverage it for whatever they want to use it for. And that is part of the problem. So whilst sitting on PURC board of Dr. Asante, we never heard ECG collected 1.5 billion. We never heard that. They wrote to us that they collected 760, 800 million Ghana cedis. Now, question is, somebody must explain the difference as we are now seeing today. And these are all part of the energy sector problems that we have witnessed. And those that took those decisions now sit on radio and sometimes mock those that were actually supposed to regulate them. So clearly, some of those people didn't understand the regulatory environment in which they found themselves. That this was a regulatory entity and that those managing cannot do as they please. Those managing cannot look at the money as if it is their own, that can be leveraged for whatever purposes that they want to achieve. Having said that, I think it is most important to recognize that if the Ghana government tells us that all these infractions, all these interventions, and we are now knowing that people receive letters that directed them to do certain things, they themselves, they alone were the one that received them, the letters with the money. So PRC, for example, didn't know. So the PRC in doing this regulatory work is seen as more or less, we did not understand what's going on. Yes, we didn't understand. Now, if government of Ghana tells us, the whole Ghana, that these are the things we were doing, but we could not stop, and we cannot stop today. If they can be that clear with us, that these interventions will continue, as long as we are in government, then maybe we could have a conversation that, okay, let's see if the private sector will be okay. Now, until they do that, our position is that we are against privatization. We are also against the so-called PSP, and that we see the PSP and privatization as one and the same. And we explained to the committee that, you know, in the language of people who want to privatize, privatization is a very bastardized terminology in the last 40 years. Across the world, people have demonstrated against it. Across the world, the evidence is that it doesn't really work. So today, those who want to privatize will not call it privatization. They will find a nice terminology, private sector participation and all of that. And for us, we are not fooled by the changing dynamics or the terminology. So we say that the two are one and the same thing and we will oppose it. But let me ask a question. If we all agree that the energy sector has so many inefficiencies, from generation, transmission to distribution, why is it that we are only interested in fixing the inefficiency at the retail end of ECG? What happens to the inefficiency at generation, the way we procure electricity, for example? What happens to the inefficiency in the boardroom of ECG? What happens to the inefficiency across the various elements of the value chain? Is it only because we just want to place some people strategically to be in charge of their collections for whatever purpose that they want to achieve? This whole idea that let's privatize only the retail end of ECG where the money is, it doesn't really add up. There's something wrong. There's some sinister motive.
You suspect something fishy in here?
You suspect something. And if we are really, really, really short of solving the energy sector problems, please, let's go through the entire value chain. Let's identify all the inefficiency from generation to the retail end. and let's have a proper conversation about how to address those inefficiencies.
All right. Dr. Otu, thank you. Hold it for me. Mr. Kojopoku, your thoughts on this matter? If you can unmute for me. Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Good evening. Mr. Poku, please go on.
Yeah, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
It's very sad when I hear my brothers from TUC talk like this. It clearly tells me that they don't understand what's going on. The unions are always unions, and for me, I think that the shareholder, the owner, has a priority to make a decision, and when he makes that decision, the owner and the shareholder will take it through. I mean, unions can always advise, and we've been through this before. COSECA mediated through PURC, PUHU, during the initial PSP that was done, and it resulted in PDS. We know that they will initially take this stance of, oh, we are against and we but look, when somebody say that there is a sinister agenda at the retail end, it tells me that person doesn't understand. Because this is the same person who, when he was starting his submission, he said that somebody collects money and he thinks that it is his prerogative to do whatever they do with it. And the value chain needs the money. The problem with ECG, it's got nothing to do with the core mandate of ECG. It's got everything to do with the person who is sent onto the market to sell the hard work of everybody. We all know the value chain, right? Now, I always keep this simple analogy. Oh yeah, awiosu. You do awiosu. The person who does the awiosu gives it to a lady to go out and sell. You do 1,000 cedis of awiosu. Then the person who goes out and sell your awiosu comes back and give you 500 cedis every day. Is it your awiosu that is a problem, or the guy who is going out and bringing you 500 cedis less than what he's supposed to bring you, let alone even make profit on your 1,000 cedis? So the fundamental problem before we even go up the value chain, looking at ECG boardroom and all the other things that comes with it, is to look at how much money are we getting back? Look, there is the gas. There is the transporter of the gas. There is the GMPC who owns the molecules. There is Gridco. There is everybody involved in the value chain. Now, we are short of 800 million Ghana cedis. That's the shortfall. Okay, the shortfall is about 800 million Ghana cedis. So now you are telling me that we have a financial shortfall of over 40%. And somebody wants to tell me that if you want to fix that revenue collection, is that sinister? You know, when the gentleman from PUHU was speaking, he said that ECG has a social. There is nothing social about ECG. ECG has no social obligation. When my brother Dubik took over, there was a problem he had when the previous PURC had split this DSC1 and DSC2, and only one side of the DSC was coming to ECG. He called us, and in conversation with PURC, both DSC1 and DSC, which is the distribution service 1 and distribution service charge 2, were put together and given back to ECG. Nobody has a problem with ECG living within their means, and that is what they should do. I mean, my brother Dubik says that, ECG works on a situation whereby they only get what they are supposed to get. Yes, Mr. Dubik, as a company, your distribution service charge is what you leverage. You don't leverage other people's money. So if you are solvent and you are able to keep your house in order, if 500 cedis comes to you as a distribution service charge, then leverage your 500 cedis. But the most important thing is that let's not anybody think that where we are today, we have come a full circle. After PDS, some of us went very strongly and said that we should go back to the private sector participation. And these same people came back and said Ghanaians can do it. And another bought into it, and we never went back to private participation. We've come a full haul, and we are where we are today. Look, for me, I have said it. I chaired Dr. Baumia's manifesto, and I was 100% heavy on the PSP, which is the retail privatization. Right. The retail end has to be privatized. The government, which is the shareholder of the company, will make that decision, and we will support him to pull it through. TUC can bring their concerns. We will take that concern the same way we did with PDS before we got PDS. We will mitigate their concerns.
Mr. Kojopoku, I'll be picking final talks and a way for it, so just hold that recommendation for now.
Mr. Kojopoku,
I'll allow, yes, just 1 second, and then we'll take a short break.
Speakers have made. I was given an example of how to go forward in terms of a bridge finance. Sir, I didn't say that ECG was keeping the money or ECG was anticipating to.
Right.
I didn't say
absolutely.
That. You asked, oh, what do you think are the financial models that could be looked at? So, Mr. Kojopoku, if you say we took the money and we were, no, that was not what I said. I want us to have a holistic conversation because where we are getting to now is, okay, let's find out how we solve a problem. For example, when who is here, if ECG were to collect everything and send everything, okay, in certain months, ECG's salary bill in a month is 100 million.
100 million cedis.
So if we collect everything and we send everything minus that, it's the same pool that will beat us because you are not paying what?
Their salaries.
Their salaries. So it's the carrot and the stick. I just don't want us to oversimplify what issues. If we want to solve a problem, let's solve a problem. I'm not going to sit here and point fingers at who did what or that did that. This is a whole system. They brought up a conversation about the whole value chain. The whole value chain conversation has been there. And it's something that we have all been promoting that there should be an audit.
All right.
Mr. Suleimana was with me this afternoon at the same, meeting. That was the same thing we spoke about.
All right. Let me just, so your comments are welcome on our social media handle, on Facebook, on YouTube, on myjoyonline.com, and we'll read them out here for our panelists, and of course, you two also here. We'll be taking a short break shortly. And my guest on Zoom, please bear with me, I'll come back to you. And then we'll go into the very important matter of the missing containers. And so let me just find out, before we take that break, let's set the ball rolling. Mr. Suleimana, where are we on the missing containers?
Where we are is simply, as we all know, an interim report or interim final report has been submitted to the Honourable Minister. Honourable Minister has subsequently constituted several committees. ECG itself has also constituted committee to look into this and possibly establish culpability where there is. Ministry of Energy, as far as we are concerned, we are working with the national security. We are aware that some containers have been recovered.
At the last count, the minister said over 200. Is that the same figure we have, or it's gone up?
That is correct. That was the preliminary one. What we knew then. We understand national security is working on more. We don't have the details of the national security.
So indeed, the containers are missing.
Well, as I said, I mean, it is under investigation now. As far as the ministry is concerned, we would only we'll be able to make firm statements when, the outcome of those investigations, point to that.
But if you have recovered over 200, it means they were missing.
They were misplaced.
Is that not it?
Well, I mean, as I said, as far as the ministry is concerned, this committee's interim report, gave, certain, recommendations, and an outcome of those work, the work, used certain, words. I'm not in a position to confirm or deny, but suffice it to say, as I've said, that we are working based on what the report has said, to implement recommendations and also to verify some of the outcomes of the report.
Mr. Anamu, I know you're gonna have your time to walk us through the process.
Yeah.
But is it possible that these containers are missing?
Is it possible?
Possible.
As a human institution, if there is collusion between the various actors at the gate, it could be possible if there's collusion. I mean, it must be some kind of massive collision right from, because a container does not move, it's not like a vehicle. The container has to be lifted at a stack and put onto a vehicle. So unless there is real collusion, planned outright thievery, that is the only way by which a container can get missing. Otherwise, no.
Dr. Asante, is it possible?
I don't work at the port, but I think all things are possible. Like you said, with collusion, anything is possible.
Mr. Sapon.
You see, when I hear container getting missing and knowing procurement process.
Exactly.
I don't get it. Why should the containers even get to the port and left there for it to get missing? Because there are so many, I mean, Incoterms, we call it international commercial terms that we use. Everybody understand. You have CIF, you have DDP, you have CPT, everything. The DDP is you give the order to whoever had won your contract. Then this person will bring in the items, make sure it is cleared, and move to the buyer's what? Warehouse. Are you getting the point?
I get it.
We sit in our offices, we buy things, we buy cars, we buy advert motors, we buy things. Procurement officer or director, you don't even need, there are clearing agents. The suppliers, they also have their own agents.
Okay.
So for the containers to get to port, and the procurement person hears that it's missing. I was asking, are they remote control? The containers, are they remote controls or car keys? It cannot just fall out of your pocket. We don't get it from the procurement side.
Okay.
We do not understand why.
And for the next 1 hour, that's what we'll be doing.
Very good.
We'll be going to look for the containers that are missing. In fact, if you have been following the news, last week, some ECG workers who were on their way to fix a problem somewhere in the central region, they were arrested for carrying ECG cables. They were going to do legitimate business. That is how this matter has been reduced to, that ECG workers who are doing the legitimate duties are not even safe from this matter. When we return, we'll walk you through the process and finances to the missing containers. And of course, my colleague Shola Aderemi, Lois, will bring us comments from you. Stay put as we bring you the final hour of the dialogue.
And you are still watching the National Dialogue right here on Joy News. My name is Lois Shola Adeyemi. Now, earlier, before we started this conversation, we decided to ask our audience on social media about this topic. We asked what we should do with ECG, whether to privatize it or to fix it. And netizens really do have a lot to say on this topic. So we take a few of the comments. As I said, we put this out before the conversation started, and we do have a number of the comments, meaning that a lot of Ghanaians are very interested in the conversation we are having right here in studio. Mizan says that the criminality in ECG is too much. Government has to come in, take over, make sure that every district takes account of hours, hold meter. If they knew these, you will see how ECG will be. Robert joins the conversation. He says that see how fellow citizens have destroyed our own country. Only one government official, especially the past ones, can buy ECG and add HER, name to save it for Ghana. She will have definitely die, and this plenty money will not be beneficial to her kids. Anthony joins the conversation as well, saying that when the place is sanitized first and all stolen items are retrieved and the syndicates are crushed, we would know whether they really needed those boring tariff adjustments, which in every sense was wickedness to cover up the looting. ECD shouldn't have been suffering if those leaders weren't as selfish as they have been and uncovered now. Wait. So Diodone says that sack all non-performing engineers, regional and district managers. James also joins the conversation. He says that sell to scrap dealers. Even Ghana police now have value than the ECG. Okweku, you can hear the commotion in the studio. Okweo says that we have tried to fix it for years, but no results. Privatization doesn't mean selling it. It is okay to privatize. My only concern is that it should be a Ghanaian company that it's sold to. Kurigu says privatize ASAP, meaning as soon as possible. Sam joins the conversation. He says that privatize, fix it now, they will worsen again. Chairman says that ECG should be privatized. Politicians are using ECG as corruption crime scene. Abdul joins the conversation. He says that Mahama will fix it. Don't you worry. Naya Sagri says that privatize it as soon as possible. Nobi says that NDC has sold all properties of Ghana. Very soon they will sell Jubilee House. Omar Chum says that we should privatize it. Akwesi says that NDC is evil. So all these stories is about selling the company. Nana managed it for 8 years with the lights on and has imported thousands of containers of new machines and wires for the country. Instead of you to work with it, you want to sell to your cronies for your own interest. Before, well, that's what he said. And then we take our last one that says that Joseph, this is from Joseph, he says that ECG should even be sold, burdensome ECG, and that's about it. So as I said, we asked social media, and you can see that this is what Ghanaians are saying on the issue, whether we should, or what we should do with ECG, whether to privatize it or to fix it. We're still here having this conversation. Elton will be back, but we take a little break. When we come back, there's more for you right here.
This is a national dialogue on the electricity company of Ghana. We are in the last hour to wrap it up. And of course, we're also live on Joy 99.7 FM. The next few minutes ahead of us, we are in search of some missing containers. And let me again welcome my guest, Dr. Mr. Richard Anamu, former DG of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Mr. Mahama, Dobek Mahama, former Managing Director of the ECG, Mr. Collins Ajiman Sapon, from the Institute of Procurement, Dr. Asante, former board member of PURC, of course, Mr. Suleimana from the Energy Ministry. Also on Zoom, we have Mr. Kojo Poku, Dr. Otu from the TUC, and of course, Mr. Nyami also from PU. Now, for this discussion, we want to establish if indeed containers can get missing at the port. And also want to find out why ECG budgeted to procure certain items within a year, some less than $1 billion, ended up spending over $8 billion. We'll find out whether ECG, as per its establishments, should come under PPA directive in terms of procurement. And then we'll find out whether the consumer must always be burdened with tariff adjustment to address the inefficiencies in the system, and then the way forward as far as policy direction is concerned from the Energy Ministry. Mr. Anamu, please walk us through the process at the ports.
Okay, thank you very much. For every cargo that is coming into the port, the shipping line starts with what we call the manifest. And this manifest that has details of each, or I'm here, we're dealing basically with the containers. So the manifest will list the containers and everything that's connected with that container, who the consignee is and all that. This manifest is sent down straight to the GRA. And it has its own processes that goes through electronically, from GRA to ICUMS, and then to the ports and all that. That is even before the arrival of the vessel. And before the arrival of the vessel, these containers would have been classified as to those that would have to go direct delivery because they've been cleared, those that are dangerous, and those that have to go through some kind of inspection. That is right before the arrival of the vessel at the port. So by the time the vessel arrives at the port authority, in this case GPHA, is fully aware of who the container, the type of container it is and where it is supposed to be going. The vessel arrives in the ports, GPHA is responsible for discharging everything from the vessel. Now, after this discharge, the containers are positioned at all the various places.
Right.
While the necessary electronic processes are taking place. Now, you, the consignee, who would also have your bill of lading with you, because it's the bill of lading that gives you title to the goods. Then you either you have been notified that the vessel has arrived. Unfortunately, good. I think we have the system that we have produced out here. Then you will see that all days the GRA sends electronic copy of the manifest to GPHA.
Right.
So this is starting from the vessel, the shipping line, now on the first point. Now that prepares the manifest. Arriving at the port, all this before the arrival, all these people, GRA, together with GPHA, they are fully aware of the goods that have arrived. Then from there, once the vessel arrives, the consignee goes to the shipping line to now go and collect what he called his information about the vessel, the cargo, the container that has arrived, and whatever fees he has to pay.
Right.
Then from there, he then moves down to the issue of customs. Go and clear all, do all the customs clearance and pay all the necessary dues and all of that. In all of this, all the GPHA is doing at the port is just stacking the containers.
Okay.
At the various locations. It's not doing anything, it's just waiting. Now you, the consignee or the agent, will now go through the process with customs, make sure that, I mean, for example, if it is a dangerous cargo, go to where it is. But here, because we are dealing with ECG, maybe it will be good for me to just focus on the ECG.
Right.
So these ECG containers are then sent out to the port, and ECG or their agents, whether it is a procurement the unit or it is
materials and transport,
or they have contracted the private clearing agent to do that for them. They will go through all these processes with the various customs people. Make sure that they pay the dues, go to ICOMS, validate, declare them as to whether how much duty it is, and they go and get what they call the CCVR, that is the classification and the valuation report. Do all that which is listed here, and get finally to GPHA. By the time they get to GPHA, it means they are paid all the duties. Everything. And
from GPA, then it is exiting the port.
GPHA now goes through and checks that you are paid everything and all of that, and then check that, yes, the container did arrive. But remember that as the containers are in the port, not all the containers that arrive in the port with the vessel will remain in the port. Some of them are sent out to what we call ICD, that is inland clearing depots. These are private companies licensed by customs.
Right.
And even before they leave, all the information about them, before they exit, is electronically recorded and all the information is available. So it means that for every movement, that is even with that removing the goods from the container, all of that is electronically recorded and the information is available by GPHA. Then there are others that probably the containers arrived and that the guy has gone through the clearer, it has to be stripped. Or customs have examined them and therefore they need the goods to be stripped from the container, then that's what we call the devanning. So for ECG, I'm not so sure as to whether any of the containers were ever devanned inside the port. You know, devan means you have stripped the goods from the container out. If that happens, the goods would have moved away from the container onto a vehicle.
Right.
When that happens, that container is no longer with ECG. It goes back to the shipping line. Once the goods have left the container, it is no longer in the system as a container. It means it's not between the shipping line to neither take it to its own terminal or it goes to empty stack as far as GPH is concerned.
Okay.
Now, when you have gone through all of that, the consignee goes through, he goes to pay whatever duties he has to pay, goes to GPHA, GPHA clerks will check all the necessary documents, generate the way bill for him, everything is sorted out, it goes to the final gate, the security. Remember, the ports of Ghana are custom ports, customs control ports.
Right.
It means that at the gate, you have ECG. You have customs. At the gate, you have the police. I repeat, the Ghana Police Service.
Okay.
Also at the gate. So all of these teams have to certify before the goods actually exit from the port. So it means that if these processes are followed, it is almost impossible for a container to exit the port.
Without, I mean, the trail will have to be established.
The trail is there. And it's not a one-man trail.
Okay.
And it's not also manual. Currently, it is electronic.
Okay.
So you should be able to track all of these.
I'll have to share the time here. Yes. So let me start with Mr. Dubek. So Mr. Dubek. Finish. Okay. So, Mr. Sapon, I mean, educators. First, the claim is that ECG is a private entity, more, even though a government is a private entity, and for that reason, PPA laws does not apply to ECG. And at what circumstances would a company budget to procure items worth $1 billion Ghana cedis, for example? We ended up procuring over 8.something billion. And we've been told by the committee set up by the minister that the procurement officers at Stanford was even under pressure to let certain things pass.
Okay. When in section 21, once you are a public entity, And again, let me go to Section 16 of the law.
I'm trying to do this in 3 minutes for me.
Okay. The Section 16 of the law can exempt the minister with the board of PPA, can exempt an organization or an entity from the use of the Public Procurement Act. Okay? And the C is saying that when you see that the people are operating commercial business, for which I heard my senior mention that ECG is a monopoly. Okay? So they don't come under that. It's a monopoly. So the competition, so companies like ADB, they are operating at the commercial market. Because if ADB want to buy, let's say, counting machine, they have to go through, let's say, 4 months to get counting machine. EcoBank will just pick a call and get counting machine. That's the kind of commercial operation that we are talking of. Right. At the C, the ECG does not fall into that. So stepping aside the Procurement Act is a no-no. And PPA did not approve them because they are not into too much commercial. Again, from the law, it is saying that once you are using public funds, either partly or wholly, you come under the law.
Is it normal, for example, I mean, you explain the law to us, we understand. Is it normal, for example, for one of your members who is in charge of procurement, and he is responsible for procuring whatever, 1 billion, at the end of the year, and the accounting stands at 8.5 billion. Under what circumstances, and then the member says I was under pressure? Is it possible?
You see, at times when you have people, you don't attack the personalities. But our checks that we've done, the procurement director does not have procurement background.
The claim is that, okay, please go on.
He does not have procurement background. I am a chartered person. I'm a fellow of our institute. I've practiced procurement over 20 years, worked in so many, that our check, the man is not registered with he's not part of our membership, okay?
But it doesn't mean that he's unqualified to do the job that he was assigned to.
We are yet to have a law backing us. It's in Parliament now. December, it was one of the memo, okay? So now, we cannot stop anybody. But you cannot have anybody as head of finance director, who is not a chartered accountant. You can't. There's no medical doctor who is not a member of the GMA. Same as lawyers. But because we are yet to have a law backing our practice, yes, it's at Parliament now, anybody who finds himself or herself in procurement space can practice. We can't stop them.
So the man, for the fact that we are aware, he's not part of you.
No, but he's not a member of.
But it doesn't mean that he's unqualified for the job.
Ship manifest is not part of their manifest.
He is not part of our manifest. As for qualified or not, we cannot. They can put him there. But for us, he doesn't have the ethical training.
Training?
Yes. We write ethical training for us to be certified every year. Holding MSIFs as a member. He does not have. He can come and prove. Okay?
So your conclusion is that ECG had somebody in charge of procurement who was not up to the task.
Conclusion, that.
It was not up to the task.
And that is, at times, that is the painful aspect. That there are well-trained, chartered, experienced people. They are there, walking around. Some are not even having job to do. Okay? But people will just place people there, maybe for their own whatever. Then they will be bastardizing. And at times, the painful aspect is that some of these guys are having other professions. Okay? I don't want to mention any they are having other professions. They are in the forefront of procurement practice. And when we start talking, over lunch. Maybe I'm an engineer. I'm this. But you are practicing procurement.
Okay.
Some of the smart engineers, they are part of our training.
Okay. Let me bring in Mr. Mahama at this point. Mr. Mahama, the claim is that you recruited somebody in charge of procurement and the person was not a professional, or is not a professional.
Elton, I said something at the beginning. I try very hard to shy away from this committee interim final report, because today I got one committee called me to interview me.
This committee did not call you?
This committee did not call me. I am falling short of actually, I also want to give them some level of respect and not give them my responses in the media space. But the one thing I will say in connection to this, for such a decision to have been taken, okay, it will involve the board, okay? So sometimes interpreting things in law, they tell you that there are different approaches into interpreting or what was the reason why something led to the other. If I was called, all I would have said was, can you please ask for the minutes of the said day's meeting so you find out the thinking around that day and why, what led to what. I can't sit here and divulge that because I don't know when I'm going to. I just want to be respectful.
Right.
But I have pointed to where and how they should have gotten it. That is what saddens me in all of this, because the company secretary is there. The director legal of the company is there. You see, these issues that they are talking about, they will talk about the negative stuff of Dubik, because actually, and you are here, for a proper trend analysis, is it 2 years? It cannot be 2 years.
Yeah.
So what was the essence for 2022 to 2024? If you wanted to do a proper trend analysis to determine what the company has been doing over a period of time, why only 2 years? It could have been 4 years. It could have been 5 years, just to determine something, because we want to fix a problem. Let me land my last post, and then you take over from there. Now, as my elder brother here said, he says we are going forward. We should stop dwelling on the past.
But I'm interested in what led to the over-procurement.
So it's very easy for somebody to say that it's over-procurement. In the life of a utility, is there a statement like that? I pointed out something to you at the beginning of my speech, that at the first term, ECG, let me go back and point out something to you. ECG's last time it had any form of capital injection was under President Kufuor. After that, there has been no proper look into ECG as to revamping it or pushing it forward. Now, President Nana Akufo-Addo's first tenure was to go to PDS. What was the investment then? Everybody was hoping that PDS will come in, and then what would happen? Heavy is the head. I found myself in a place where you sat in the chair, there are over 800 or 900 projects screaming for materials. You didn't have the requisite revenue at that point. That's what I'm saying. If they had called to ask for the requisite documentation that covers this, oh, what led to this? What led to that? Why were you thinking this way? Again, I said we had an.
So it is a project. Is a project that pushed you to do the over procurement?
Look, you can't call it over procurement because the thing was there, the projects were there. They have to be completed. Or I should also leave them and say, oh, because I came to meet them. But I am pointing out one thing to you. We had an ambitious plan to replace almost 6 million meters because we could see the revenue increment coming in, especially after we had finished with the digitized platform and everything. There are a lot of reasons of which I'm giving you one or two, but I'm saying I will not speak fully to this because I don't know if I'm going to, and plus don't forget that the whole conversation has also been, a cover letter has sent it to the NIB for the requisite investigation.
Yes.
We don't know which parts of it.
Have you been invited for any questioning, for example?
No. So let's leave it in the quarters that is supposed to be, out of respect.
Just a quick one. How would you describe, or what would be your reaction to this description of this scenario where the minister said that it was purely criminal, that ECG will import a container into the country, the ECG is unable to clear it, it goes to demurrage, it is auctioned, the content of the container is worth $300,000. It is auctioned for 100,000 cedis, that's $6,000. If you go back to buy from the person who won the auction at the same amount, $300,000.
I'll be honest with you, under my tenure, I never ever procured any container back. Under my tenure, when I heard of a container auction, I wrote to complain about it. Again,
but where
wait, let me
containers
talk about
auctioned?
the minister. It came to my notice about some containers that were auctioned that I wrote. Now, about the minister, the minister was working on a report. And I keep saying it, that the team he put together failed him.
Failed him?
Yes.
In what sense?
Because if the team had sat down with some, look, this is a seasoned, what do you call it, port operator. After they realized that they couldn't account for, let's say, 1,300, prepare a nice cover letter, give it to the minister. You put a cover note on it, transfer it to who? The transport minister, through the transport minister to who? GPHA. GPHA will crank it into their system. And also, you would get the responses. Again, the same team didn't sit down with some of us. Are we sure that every container's price is the same? Some. Now, let's talk about containers. He's also again here. Container shipping works in tonnage. The mere fact that there's a container doesn't mean that you can go beyond a certain weight. You understand? We need to...
But the content may be different.
The content, let's not allow... I think I've put enough doubt around the whole thing that let's leave it at that for the conversations to be had, for the truth to come out.
Okay. Mr. Sapon, you want to make an intervention? I'll go to Dr. Asante as we begin to wrap up.
We have something we call procurement planning. It's in the law, section 21. For all the public sector entities. After the budget had been read, by every November, we put together what we call procurement plan. And we do the procurement plan after budgets have been approved by the entities board that have moved to minister and all that. Then you come out, then with the procurement specialists, we come out and pick what we call procurable items.
Right.
In the entire budget for the organization. Then that is what we will use to prepare our plan. Okay? We prepare our plan. So when you do this plan, it's been approved by board, management, everybody. Okay? So why, if we do an assessment and then you have procured 80% of some items that are not in the plan, it happens. You can get emergency. So there are certain things. And even that one, the law says that you update your procurement plan every quarter.
Right.
So let's say first quarter, you bought 5, which are planned, but 2 or 3 are not planned. You come and update your procurement plan. So it is neither here nor there for you to procure above certain point, which is outside of your procurement plan.
Initially.
So
and that is the risky aspect. In fact,
the interim report.
I am very sorry for my brother. This is the first time I'm meeting him. But I loved him from distance because of the way he was doing, talking on radio.
Let's wrap it up there.
But with the Procurement Act, I'm sorry, if you play with it, they will get to you. Because there are decided cases.
Okay.
NCA.
Mr. Dube, can I go back and come back to you to wrap up?
Let me land.
Just 30 seconds. Yes, I'll come back to Mr. Muna.
There are decided cases.
Mr. Dube, let me land. Let me land.
I feel for him.
Let me land a case. Let me land.
Mr. Dube,
don't feel for me.
Mr. Dube, just 30 seconds for me.
You don't feel for me. Let me land a point for you. You see, the interim report has led you to take a stance.
The interim report is not audit report. Where they will do management letters.
Let me speak. Let me speak.
The assessment interim report. It is not audit report where you'll be written to for you to answer.
Mr. Sapon,
so don't punch holes to that that professional. It's a procurement audit. They've done their work. Pick the things and let's work at it.
Mr. Mahama.
Okay? It is not audit report.
Mr. Mahama.
You see why I didn't want to speak to this?
Okay.
Because the document fundamentally caused a major havoc. Now, from what he's saying, they have laid down procedures. Let's say, even be that as it may, because of what the Attorney General has written, ECG is not under public procurement, okay? ECG, he said something, there's a procurement manual. You go by the procurement manual. If you have to change the plan, if you have to change the plan, what do you do? In that case, that you do around
you don't change the plan. You update.
If you want to update it, if you don't have, if you are not under PPA, what do you do? You go to the board, not so.
But you are under PPA. Oh. The PPA, it is the listen. Why sidestep? No, you get that one right.
You see why?
Sidestep the Procurement Act.
This is my point.
Okay,
this is my point.
It is in the law.
I wish
that it is the minister. And the Public Procurement Board.
I think we are around here. We are almost running out. And I just want to get out
of you understand.
You've spoken a lot. If something is there black and white, if something is there black and white, Section 16 can exempt you.
Okay.
But there is what? A matter precedent.
I appreciate it. Let me go over the table.
Go to
let me, Dr. Sante, they take away.
You've spoken a lot.
No, I haven't spoken
a lot. Mr.
Sapon, can you allow?
You are challenging the Procurement Act. And that one, once I'm here, I will not let
Dr. Sante.
I never challenged the report.
Okay. Let me allow Dr. Sante to come. Dr. Sante, they take away as we begin to wrap up.
The report.
Mr. Sapon and Mr. Dobek, if you can kindly allow Dr. Sapon.
Okay, no.
So I'm taking your takeaway from this conversation.
From the whole conversation?
Yes.
I mean, I think for me, the main thing is that things have gone wrong. And it's not a new thing. They have been going wrong for a while. I just want to make the point, the unions are not keen on privatization. But we've tried to fix ECG a number of times. This procurement issue did not happen in a silent, quiet place. There were workers at all levels involved in this. They, for whatever reason, did not see it as something they needed to raise a flag about or raise an issue about. And so that is part of our problem. You know, when the government says it wants to privatize, we have the unions complaining, maybe rightfully. But when we want to fix it, we also require them to step in and say that this is not right. So a lot of wrong things are going on, and it takes us as Ghanaians, whether as customers of ECG, but also as workers of ECG, to be part of the fixing. We can't allow the wrong thing to keep going on, and then when the government says, hey, no, don't do it. So all I'll say is, things have gone wrong, and they are still going wrong. They can be fixed by Ghanaians working in the public sector.
Okay.
But we have to change the way we work, and the things we accept, whether because of government pressure, whether because of board corruption, whether because of MD not being, whatever the reason, we have to be willing to change the way we have been working. Otherwise, we just have to privatize. We have to accept that we are failing. Let the private sector do it. But we can do it. But if we don't want to do it,
Lemana.
Thank you. So, as we said, the honorable minister's preoccupation is having an efficient sector. Having an efficient sector means having an efficient distribution, subsector, a distribution subsector where everything is done by industry standards, so that we'll be able to globally keep loss levels, under 10% as compared to the current levels. Ensure customers, customer delight. At the end of the day, get the right voltages. People will be able to power their appliances and work well. And every report that comes to the minister, including the latest one, is taken very seriously. So the honorable minister has indicated, has referred the report to appropriate state institutions to look into the merits, to look into the findings, to see what were, the underlying causative, factors. And if there is culpability, as Minister has indicated, to go over that and then address it. So as far as the Ministry of Energy is concerned, this is a very serious matter that is currently being looked into. And the ministry is looking at it with all the seriousness and hopefully also the speed, employing all the assets, the state's, powers to, as it were, prosecute this as, effectively as possible.
All right, Dr. Otu from TUC, your takeaway and the way forward.
Okay, thank you. I think I want to draw Kujopoku's attention to the fact that there are some people who come to conversations like this with arrogant posture. let's assume that I don't know anything or the unions don't know anything. At least I've sat on the PURC board for 4 years. I have participated in drafting a secret memo to Akufo-Addo on ECG and the energy sector. At least I have read that ECG declares that they have collected 700 million to cash waterfall, and they also then write to the Ministry of Finance that they collected 1.4 billion. I have read a few things. So Kojo Poku should not think that he is more sensible than the rest of us.
Let's go to the way forward.
The way forward, in my view, is that I agree with Dr. Asante that Ghanaians can face this problem. We can face this problem, and there's no need for us to privatize ECG into foreign hands. Because if you go this route, I can bet you we can get some foreigners, private people who can make better laws in Parliament than the current Parliament does.
Okay.
It is important that we do not talk of privatization at the least sign of any problem. Other than that, this country, we probably have to go back to colonial days and get some foreigners to rule us.
I appreciate your time. Mr. Jabesh, your final thoughts on this matter. Engineer Jabesh and Mr. Atta, if you can unmute for me. Okay, he's not getting our attention. Mr. Kojo Poku, your final thoughts on this matter.
Well, thank you. I don't know how this conversation became a Kojo Poku conversation. I am confused and lost
if we can focus on the way forward.
Let me point something out. Mr. Dubik, I think you should give a copy of the Attorney General letter of 20th July 2020 to Dr. Sapon for him to read. And I think that will clarify his stance on this ECG needing the PPA. Look, the Attorney General is the chief legal officer of the country. If he has written that ECG does not need PPA, that settles the matter. I don't think anybody else can come and say that ECG needs PPA against the advice of the Attorney General. I think the Attorney General advice, I think, is final until somebody else go to court and is said otherwise.
And can you
the way forward,
yeah.
The way forward for me is that, look, we have gone, like I said, 360. My brother from the Gapua said that this thing could not have happened without any collusion. I am 100% convinced that even if 2 containers left the port, it can only be done if there was collusion. The focus should be at the port, what went wrong at the port, not so much of what the procurement processes at ECG is. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether I have Mr. Jabez or Mr. Arte's attention. All right. Mr. Timothy, your final thoughts on this matter. Right, we don't have his attention. Let me come to the studio as we begin to wrap up. Let me start with Mr. Sapon. Mr. Sapon, you have just 1 minute.
Okay. So first of all, my brother is saying that he did not challenge the Public Procurement Act, but he's challenging the report. Okay. So I'm making that clear. However, for me, from the procurement side, the procurement guys that came to do that search or report or investigation, they didn't come as auditors. They are auditors that when they come and they are going, they will write management letters for the management to respond. These guys came to do an investigation in terms of how procurement have been done over the period, over the years. I don't know why 2 years, why 3 years, I'm not there.
And so for you, the way forward should be what?
So the way forward is my brother and the other people should take the procurement, the report that my colleagues, okay, they have written. We need to take it, understand it, and correct the wrongs in the future.
All right.
Because once you are using the public whatever to do your business, you cannot sidestep it. And if you want to sidestep it, there's a process. They didn't go through it.
All right.
They did not go through, and they were supposed to go according to the Public Procurement Act because they are a public entity.
Right. Right. Mr. Anamo?
Yes.
The way forward for you.
Well, the first, even before we get to the way
still
forward.
Haven't found the
yes. As I stated on the layout, containers arriving at the port through the manifest to GRA, Ghana Revenue Authority. The question is, has GRA complained to GPHA as a complainant that container number this brought in on this day, we cannot find them? So that's a starting point. Because if that is not happening, then the whole system something is absolutely wrong. Because the shipping line sends the manifest first and foremost to GRA. So GRA should be the first complainant, even if ECG is not complaining. So as far as GPHA is concerned, who is the complainant in this case?
The Minister for Energy.
No. Before it gets to the Minister of Energy, because the Minister of Energy will be, I'm talking of containers, because the Minister of Energy will be dealing with the cargo. Okay, because if you get the container and there's nothing inside it, you have nothing. Once the container number ABC was sent to by documents to GRA, have you reported to GPHA that you're looking for these containers and you cannot find them?
Okay.
Then we can proceed from there. As far as the other point is the shipping lines. The shipping lines have information as to containers that have arrived and others are still sitting in the port or they cannot find them. But going forward, I think that I am one of those who are opposed to this idea of privatization.
Okay.
Yes, because see, for the simple reason that, look, my brother Tubig is sitting here. He went to school, I went to school. We entered the same engineering school, trained by the same lecturers. What is it that he goes to the private sector and he can do better? And I go to the government and I cannot do better than that. Swap us. And he goes to government and he fails. I go to the private sector and succeed. It means it is the system, the individuals. I think that ECG as it is today is not operating or moving as an institution that is looking for revenue by satisfying its customers. It is astonishing, it's unbelievable that ECG should be sitting in the offices for people to be building and coming to apply to them for power supply, for meters. No, because every single plan, every single building that is coming up passes through the town and country plan, or they call the urban people. So they have the layout, yes. So ECG should first and foremost be ahead of this country. That's why in GPHA, when I was there, I kept telling our managers that, look, it takes time to construct a port facility. And therefore, there's the need for us to build facilities that are at least 3 to 5 years ahead of the country.
Okay.
So in the same way, ECG should look at their layouts and map out so that by the time you come to say that you are coming to build, they already have their systems ready for you.
All right.
And they should be the people who should be following you up. Not you applying to them and following them in their offices to look for meters and all those kind of things. And even after you have paid, you now have to go also come and carry them to come and do the
all right.
assessment.
I think let me allow Mr. Muhammad to wrap it up for us.
Yeah, I would just like to cure some mischief from my elder brother on the left. I said clearly that I was not speaking to the report. I didn't challenge the Procurement Act or what is said in the Procurement Act. That's a matter for courtroom gymnastics. All I will say is this. My tenure under ECG, I was there for 2 years, 4 months. My work I did there was clear. The successes I chalked was clear. The revenue increment was clear. Taking the company cashless was clear. We started the loss reduction program. I came to do my bit. I have done my bit. I have left. Whoever comes after also has a mandate to carry on from where I left off. Let's do our best to consider all our options. Let's operate in a better working environment. And then in the end, we'll be the best people to judge whether if under this person, this was the growth we saw. If under this person, that was the growth we saw. And as my elder brother to the right is saying, sometimes the whole conversation is about leadership. So I'll just leave it at that. I have done my bit. I have seen my success. I am happy with what I did. So if the mantle is on another person, let's give the person all the support that the person needs. And I say here unconditionally, the current managing director, if he needs me anytime, any day, anywhere, he should just call and I'll come running.
Is privatization the way forward?
As I said, with what they've done right now, where they've reached, there was some form of private sector participation already. So clearly, if that form of private sector participation is comfortable and can be moved a notch, because under the loss reduction program, ECG doesn't purchase meters anymore. There are metering manufacturing companies now stationed in Ghana to manufacture, meter a whole area and take what the revenue increment.
All right.
That was the conversation. So they should follow out, because it's the same thing if you privatize. If you privatize, the person has to take whatever operational cost they need. So I also push you back to, because it's a whole teaching curve. Let's look at condition precedent 4, where under PDS, which sought to give them what? That kind of a mandate where they get to recoup all their operational costs before what is left is what's swept in. So we just have to take a few things into consideration.
All right, I think Mr. Jabez has just joined. Mr. Jabez, just have just 1 minute to wrap it up for us.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I think that whether we like it or not, the situation has reached a point where we as Ghanaians have to make a decision and a choice on how we want our distribution services to be delivered. I agree with most of my professional colleagues who have said that there's no reason why Ghanaians cannot run it. But for one reason or another, for 50 years, we have not been able to get this thing right. And so either we are going to allow or set it up in a way that it can run well. But if we are not willing to do that, then the only choice is probably to hand it over to somebody else that will be able to withstand the pressure and run it clean. But it's a choice for all of us as Ghanaians to make, and that's the way I see it.
All right. Thank you so much. Engineer Jabez Amisa Arta is a former chief executive for BUI. He chaired a committee that was tasked by an energy minister to recommend the way forward for ECG. Because of time, I can't go through others. But you've been listening to procurement experts, Mr. Collins Ajuman Sarpon, and of course, Mr. Dobek Mahama, former MD of ECG, Mr. Richard Anamu, former Director General of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Dr. Asante, former board member of PURC, and of course, Mr. Suleimana from the Energy Ministry. You also heard Kojopoku, energy expert. You heard Dr. Otu from the TUC, Mr. Nyame from PU, and of course, you as well. We'll end it here. Surely we'll be back with another exciting dialogue to shape national discourse. My name is Elton Roby. Whatever you are up to in the hours ahead, I hope it's profitable. Have a good evening.